Welcome to the EchoCast. I am Bond, and this is a special episode where we will be interviewing, or really just chatting with, MrHulthen. MrHulthen is a established Mass Effect content creator. He's especially on YouTube, but he also streams on Twitch and has, obviously a presence on social media and Twitter and so on. I really wanted to have him on just to chat about how he got started in games, content creation, and then obviously talk about Mass Effect and nerd out together. So go ahead and take a listen. Make sure to subscribe to this channel if you like this kind of content. Be sure to check out my other stuff. I've got 50 plus Mass Effect videos that are mostly speculation videos and news updates about things that we are hearing. Take a listen to the show. Let us know what you think down in the comments, and we'll go from there. Okay, so today I have MrHulthen. I assume that's what you would like to go by.
Alex is also fine.
Or Alec or Alex?
Alexander, but
Alexander. Okay, great. And we'll be talking. Most people are going to come to this video to listen to us talk about Mass Effect, but first we're going to talk about other stuff. So, Alex, I'm curious about, well, let's start with games. What was your introduction to gaming?
Dude.
Yep.
Let's see. I think I mentioned it on my stream yesterday. Nintendo 64 was my first console ever. And that was playing Super Mario 64. Then I played Legend of Zelda, Ocarina of Time. Those were my first games.
Man, you set the bar high to start.
I did. Well, okay, and then I kind of moved on to Game Boy. I was in the entire Nintendo Renaissance basically, and I didn't play like PlayStation up until, I don't know, when I was like 12 maybe. I wasn't really into the whole PlayStation thing until then, I think.
Sure.
But yeah, it was Nintendo first, and then Mass Effect was probably, what was it, like a year after it launched that I got into that. So yeah,
Jeez.
I've been in the bubble.
Yeah, for real. Now, what's your kind of primary way of playing these days? Are you more of a PC player? Do you still game on consoles? What's your preferred method at this point?
Today, I like playing like all consoles I can. I also play on a Switch sometimes. I play Pokemon, so
sure.
And I also played basically most of the bigger launches on Switch, and then of course PlayStation 5 with like Horizon this year, or last year should I say, and then we had God of War. And
for anyone curious, we're recording this on New Year's Day, so when we start talking about dates, it's going to be weird.
yeah But anyway, so yeah, so I prefer to play on basically everything. PC I primarily use to record for my videos, so because I mostly talk about basically every game I play on the channel already, which are usually PC games.
Sure. Yeah, it's it's interesting for me. I have a pretty good computer. I have, I should play on my computer. I have a nice enough computer. That's what I should play on. But I always find myself on my Xbox. There's something, it just works. I don't have to worry about driver updates. I don't have to worry about anything. I can I have two monitors, so I can like do computer stuff on one, play games on the other. They don't affect each other. It's great. So, it's kind of that. I've never gotten into the whole like the PC Master Race thing, which I still find a weird term. And then the whole console, like all that, like I've played on both since I was a little kid. And so I've never had that like one is better than the other. They just do different things. And nowadays you can hardly even say that. They kind of do the same thing nowadays. It's closer than it's ever been.
So PCs are mostly like a workstation now. I consider it to be a workstation because, like, for the Witcher review, the Witcher 3 next gen, I played that on a PS5. I got a code for a PS5 because I wanted to try out the haptic feedback.
The DualSense.
I heard a lot after the game released. I heard all this shit about how how the PC version was so buggy, and I didn't
Hmm.
experience that because I played it on the PS5, and it
Sure.
was wonderful.
Yeah.
Basically, no bugs at all.
It's really funny how that stuff works, and you can see the studios that develop like like PC first or console first,
Mm,
and you can typically see that because the other one suffers.
yeah.
And especially was it the Witcher 3 remake that started with another studio with a third party, and then they brought it back to CD Projekt Red. I
Ooh,
think it was.
I don't
And
know. Maybe.
yeah, I'm fairly certain that was a story like a year or two ago that they had contracted it out. It wasn't going well, so they brought it back in house. And I'm assuming with some maybe leftover devs from content they're not making for Cyberpunk, my assumption was always that they moved people to that
Yeah.
instead. So, okay, so you game. We'll definitely talk about Mass Effect. That's a note there. But what got you into and when did you start doing content creation and stuff like that?
That was the first real video, I guess. I mean, you could basically rewind this back to up to leading up to the launch of Mass Effect 3.
Okay.
And when they released the demo for Mass Effect 3, so what I did is I basically just uploaded the Reaper sound effects. That's where my channel started back in 2012.
Oh
And
wow.
people kept
Okay.
looking for that, oh, the Reaper sound effects are so cool.
Mm-hmm.
And then basically the channel just that's all I uploaded on the channel. And then on let's see, what was it, December 2020, when the teaser for the next Mass Effect released, I made a reaction video for that.
For the Game Awards. Yep.
Yeah, that kind of not blew up, but it got quite a bit of views and quite a bit of subscribers there. And then Jacksepticeye checked out my Reaper sound effects video
Oh
on his
wow.
video,
Okay.
which drew a bunch of people to my channel.
Is
I was
that
like, oh, okay, I gotta
is that
start
still your
that.
biggest video?
No, actually
Oh wow.
not. My
Cool.
my biggest video is, of course, my my Cyberpunk 2077 mod videos with questionable thumbnails.
Well,
And
yeah.
and and my what was it? The tripods explained from War of the Worlds. That's probably my most viewed video for some.
Weird.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's
How
not Mass
funny.
Effect. Like
Sure.
in total, of course, Mass Effect is the most viewed topic on the
Of
channel.
course.
But then
But it's
there's
just a couple
also,
random.
yeah, it's not really related.
How funny. Now, can you, if you remember, because I'll do the same afterwards. What was your setup like at first? Your recording and editing setup,
Uh,
just out of curiosity.
the thing is, I had actually started trying to stream over on Twitch like a year before or 2 years before. I was one of those struggling streamers, I was like, trying to get up there. Didn't work.
Was that
So,
before 2020 or in
oh yeah, or
2012?
like 2000 or 2018 maybe. That's where I
Oh, okay,
started, I think,
okay.
but it didn't go anywhere. It's super hard to grow on Twitch organically, of course, so I just
Oh,
gave
trust
up.
me, I know.
Yeah, but the thing is, I had already, because of that, bought a mic that was a Rode NT, I think it's called. So I
Sure.
had a pretty substantial mic,
Oh
and
yeah.
then I had just my webcam C920. But now, of course, I have a system camera. I just used a little bit of the YouTube money for that. So,
Well,
and
sure.
the cam
Yeah.
and the mic here is a shotgun mic, is what it's called.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. The
Mm.
hyper directional
Yeah,
kind of setup.
exactly.
My first setup was I started off as the Division creator, the Ubisoft game,
Yeah, I
the
saw that.
Ubisoft series, and I got into that. That game came out in 2016, the first one,
Yeah.
and basically I was involved in the community. I had never made YouTube videos. I had never streamed. I didn't understand. Like I just didn't think about it, and there were so many people who made videos for that game who were just really mean. They were just jerks. It was just, but
Really?
they were really popular. It was really weird. And so there was this like really lame idea I had of like, well, I'll go be a nice one. I'll go be one of the nice people who makes content.
Yeah.
And I mean, it was a mess. My first stream, I started streaming in 2017, before I even did videos or anything. And my first setup was one 20-inch screen, a really old computer, and I had an Xbox One. And the only way I could capture footage was, I'm not sure if you're familiar with the Xbox app on Windows, but
No.
you can basically stream your Xbox to an app and play on your computer screen.
Okay.
And so I would play through that app, and I would capture that window for my game capture. I had some cheapo like Logitech headset with the boom mic. That was my
That's
mic. I mean, that's where it started, right? And then it went from there. I have a much nicer setup now, but it's funny how I think that's a good thing though, because I think if you start off with everything perfect, it's you don't have that like organic kind of feel as it
yeah.
comes up.
The thing is, I've noticed that as much as I've invested in a new mic and invested in a new camera, it doesn't seem to really matter much for retention and stuff like that for how long people keep watching, as long as you provide some form of information that people want to grab onto. The thing is, like, my retention has increased somewhat, like, the average view time for people, but it's like very slightly. And I think that's mostly because of my subscribers are Mass Effect fans. So people just
Sure,
watch longer because they're interested in what I have to say.
they're there for
But
you.
yeah, like, that's basically what it's become. Whenever I'm talking about Mass Effect, of course. Whenever it's something else, they're like, "Fuck that, I don't wanna watch it." Oh.
Yep, yep,
But, yeah, so I don't think the equipment really matters anymore. There's, like, huge streamers that still use those, as you said, those little
the
mics.
little boom mic. Yeah,
Yeah,
it's
because it's just a charm, it's just a thing, because you can still hear what you're saying,
sure,
can still see you, so it doesn't really matter. Depends, what kind of content you do. Um, but yeah, so I've noticed it doesn't really matter unless you're streaming, of course. It seems to
sure.
work better by then, having better quality.
Now I know I've seen you talk about before. So are you a full-time content creator? Is that your main gig at this point?
Yeah, we'll see what happens throughout the year now, because this, unfortunately, like, I'm sure you don't really, most people don't really care about this, but the Swedish IRS, basically, they're called Skatteverket.
Okay, it's
They're
the
kind
most
of
Swedish
annoying.
word I've ever heard. Okay,
Yeah, it's they're the tax whatever,
okay,
the government. And I don't really know how to pay tax. I have paid my taxes, but now they got back to me in December and were like, "Hey, we think it might be that you've filled in something wrong here." So I'm like, "Oh shit." So I probably have to pay more taxes and whatnot. I don't know. Maybe I will have to get another job just to pay out the tax that I missed out on. I don't really
so it's like
know.
trying to classify what kind of work you do or something.
Yeah, they're trying to
Okay,
figure out, okay, are you having is this a company or is it just a hobby? Because as soon as you earn more than a full-time job, then it's not a hobby anymore. And it's kind of
sure.
on the line for me. I don't make that much money as some people might think.
No,
I
yeah,
make maybe 80% of a full-time job. It's not that
sure,
much,
sure.
unfortunately, because we're talking about gaming here. Like, the
Yeah,
CPM is really low.
low. Yeah.
Uh, so yeah, you kind of have to make bangers to make any good money.
Sure, that's why you see like those people who have like, yeah, those people who can pull 500,000, a million views a video. They're living
Yeah.
pretty good, but
Yeah.
that's for every one of those, there's 1,000 people who get less than 50 views.
Yeah,
And
yeah, yeah,
yourself is someone who falls in the middle somewhere there,
yeah,
where you're obviously more successful than someone who's just getting started or who has that really low amount, but you're not cracking off giant
no.
bangers every time because it's really hard. It's not
Yeah, it is
easy.
super difficult, and it's certainly not possible when you're just talking about Mass Effect, unfortunately. Someone like maybe Star Wars Theory can keep talking about Star Wars and make a lot of money, but that's
Sure,
because Star Wars is like
it's
100
Star
times
Wars.
bigger. It's like
Hmm.
Star Wars.
And
So, yeah.
an interesting topic I see people bring up a lot though is how and you're kind of seeing the other side of this, I guess, is that with Americans, it's weird for people to try to basically just quit and go for it because we don't have universal health care and things like that. Where I've seen that, they said, I've seen people talk about like, well, there's a reason a lot of content creators are European. Like, it's not a coincidence. Now, there's obviously like exactly the situation you're talking about. It's not like the government just says, yes, stream or make videos. We'll take care of you. Like, obviously, there's other.
That's the thing. That's a huge misconception that people
Mhm.
seem to think about, like Sweden, that our government is like, yeah, sure, absolutely, you should start a company.
You don't
No,
have to
because
do anything.
we pay highest taxes. Like
Hmm.
we are one of the highest taxed countries in the world. Like
Sure.
from what I've figured out after a lot of work, and that's also the thing. There's no real rule book in Sweden of how you exactly form a company and how much you're supposed to pay. But when all is said and done, after I've paid my taxes and shit like that, I
Hmm.
get to keep maybe 40%
Sure.
of what I, and it's just like, wow, that's
Sure.
that's less than than I can pay my rent. So it kind of sucks sometimes. I love being a content creator, but it's definitely more stressful than I thought being a full-time content creator. Because you have to think about these things all the time. You have to keep hunting all those, view numbers. And then of course we have the Swedish safety net, which isn't really that big of a
Sure.
deal. Sure, like the healthcare, I can agree with. Like it
Mhm.
costs me maybe like what is it, $20 to get an examination in Sweden.
Sure.
Uh, and then the doctor sends me to an appointment and I don't have to pay. That's basically how it works. But when it comes to other stuff, like, quitting your job, if you quit your job, you're not guaranteed a form of, compensation just because you quit your job. You have to
Oh, okay.
quit your job if you're supposed to have any form of money, uh just to be able to pay your bills. You have to provide a good reason, like you have to have a health problem or something like that. Otherwise they shut you off for, I think it's like 2 months or something. So you're completely without money if you do that.
Oh,
It's not
wow.
that good as people think it is. It's this awesome utopia. No.
Because they're, and this is just from some people I know from the United States who went to work at Massive for Ubisoft. Don't you have to have, and you please correct me here, but like a resident code or something to like get a bank account, and then that allows the government to have some control over your access and stuff.
Yeah, you have to have some form of postal code that you're registered to,
Okay.
for sure.
Okay. Yeah.
And then you have to enter get entered into the national registry, I
Okay,
think.
I think that's what I was referring to. So you have all those issues, and then like you had said before, like chasing the views and stuff like that. And because you're a Mass Effect content creator, obviously you do other stuff,
Yeah,
but that's where your
I'm
viewers
known for
are,
that
and yeah.
now.
And so like what I think I see, and I've even seen it myself, and I've been learning my own lesson while I've been trying to make my own content and stuff, is that like, yeah, I don't want to make a thumbnail with my face going like,
Yeah.
but you have to, right? Like,
Yeah, that's something I didn't think was a thing before, but lately, especially during N7 day, I noticed that whenever I was going like, "Whoa, shit, oh,"
mhm,
the click-through rate got much higher because whenever I used like Shepard's face and he did like a "oh" shocked face,
sure,
I'm not kidding, like the percentage went lower and maybe just 2% lower, but that's a
that
lot when you
matters.
consider how many people it gets pushed out to. So
Sure.
some videos just did maybe 30-40% better because of that extra click-through rate. And
And same with titles, the same with it's
yeah, and that's the thing. What I always try to do with my thumbnails now, or well, I've tried to do it the last year. That's a
mhm,
lesson I learned because when I started doing these Big Dan inspired videos
mhm,
where I asked, "Oh, what happens if you do this?" Right? I got the idea from him. Obviously, we've talked about that.
sure.
And the thing is, I started being a little too clickbaity. I realized that, And then during the last year, I've tried to make this into a reverse clickbait situation where I make the topic about the thing that I am, sort
Hmm.
of clickbaiting about, but I try to make sure that I deliver on the promise and that I don't just, talk about something entirely different that has nothing to do with whatever it is. I always try to make sure that I stick on the point, but that I try to
Sure.
hype it up as much as possible and try to deliver. And looking at my retention and looking at the comments, most of the time it's worked pretty well because I usually have like I think it's 97% like rate, which is good because then
Yeah.
people are actually appreciating what you're talking about.
And people will let you know if you didn't fulfill.
Yeah, definitely.
Hmm.
But those comments have lessened over the last year. They were definitely more prevalent when I started making, those videos.
Sure.
Like, what happens if you do this? So I think I'm on the right path, but reverse clickbait is basically the best way right now to get anywhere on YouTube. There are still pretty huge YouTubers that still do it.
Hmm.
The average click, where they don't
Yeah.
deliver. There are some content creators that I keep watching that do that stuff still, but they're so overall liked that it really doesn't matter, it
They
seems
could
like.
they could almost do anything,
Yeah.
and they would get clicks. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
I think it's just a thing that people don't realize, and it's something that I've learned, even with my really small channel, is that you can play the game or not.
Yeah.
It's up to you, and there's different levels of playing the game, but like if you want to grow, it's you have to buy in a little bit. Like
You
you
have to
have to
make
be
it
willing.
interesting somehow. Like, if you're
Yeah.
supposed to, and the thing is, making it interesting, I mean, like, you have to make it super interesting. You have to make it irresistible for people to not click on it, and that's unfortunately just how YouTube works, because YouTube pushes when you have to do these things. Like, Sean Jacksepticeye, he talked about that just a few months ago. He hates how YouTube has become this sort of clickbait mania where if you don't do that, you're not going to grow because it's everywhere. You have to compete with everybody else on what type of thumbnails and titles you do, and it has to be interesting enough. The longer we go, I think it's getting harder and harder to become a YouTuber, especially a full-time content creator, because
Oh
so
yeah.
many people are doing it, so many people are like fighting for that, and YouTube just keeps suggesting videos that have a high click-through rate. It doesn't really suggest it to your subscribers. Like, I've
Your
had so many
preference or
subscribers tell me, "Oh, I'm not getting your videos whenever you're talking about something else I want to
notifications.
see."
Yeah.
It's like, yeah, it's super freaking annoying, and I hate it, but you gotta do what you gotta do.
Well, and what's wild for me is like as someone who I'm a social worker in my day-to-day life. That's my full-time
Yeah,
gig, and I've done that for over 10 years now. And so I have that like that's my Sweden. That's my miraculous, like that's my that's what I do. But
mhm,
and with this stuff, it's always been for fun. But what's interesting is that like I started off with the Division 1, then Division 2 came out. That was fun because I got to go to E3 in 2018
damn,
on Ubisoft's dime. That was awesome. I stayed in like the nicest hotel I'll ever see. It was wild. And then they also sent me out to San Francisco before that game came out, the second game, to play it like 2 months before anyone else did. And that was really cool. But, that game came out and it's waned. And then and we'll talk about this more very shortly, played Mass Effect for the first time. And I was like, I want to talk about that game a lot. And that was after the 2020 teaser trailer came out.
yeah,
So it was an embarrassment of riches for me of like, wow, this series is amazing. How did I never play it? And there's another one coming. Like I haven't gone through that pain of that 10+ year wait.
yeah,
Andromeda I know came out. We'll talk about that too. But it's for me, what was interesting is I was like, cool, I'm going to jump into this. Surely there's not that much competition. And so I went from an okay known The Division creator that was doing okay numbers and stuff like that. And then I switched over, not entirely, but a lot.
yeah,
And even in a really, what I would call a pretty small content creator community for now, that's obviously going to change as the new game comes closer. but like even just trying to get a foothold in what's a pretty calm, small community at this point,
Yeah.
because of how YouTube works now, because of how social media and all that stuff is working. Even for me, who's someone I consider myself fairly experienced in this stuff, it's been like starting over. It's been like ripping all the pages out the book and just learning again. And it's kind of fun, but for me, it's fun because my life doesn't depend on it. Like it's a thing that if my video gets 50 views, cool. 50 people, 2 roomfuls of people watch my video. That's really cool.
Yeah.
But I'm not like sweating it. I mean, I want it to be better. Like I want a stadium of people to watch my videos, but it's okay if it doesn't happen. Yeah. Yeah. So it's just that whole thing is interesting. And, yeah, well, let's talk about Mass Effect. So this is what I've been itching for. So how did you get into Mass Effect? What was your first, not even playing it? Like, were you into the first game before it even came out? Was that something that it was grabbing your interest in?
No. It's just like it was that point when I played it after the first year that it launched. I think I heard about it at first when it launched, but I wasn't really interested in gaming back then because I was a teenager. I was out hanging out with my friends, whatnot. Video games are not cool anymore.
Sure.
But no, I played a lot of Counter-Strike. That's what I did.
Okay.
Of course. And because Sweden was huge on Counter-Strike for a while.
Sure.
And then, well, I played Mass Effect after the first year it had come out, and I fell in love. I literally cried at the end. I was like, I think the thing is, Mass Effect was the first game that actually made me cry at
Sure.
the end because not because I was sad, but because I was so freaking inspired. I was like, holy shit, this is amazing. I want more. And then Mass Effect 2 came out. I cried again. And then Mass Effect 3 came out. I cried. But then at the end, I got enraged and I flipped out and I threw a chair. So I've been in the bubble for a while. But then after Mass Effect 3, I lost all interest in playing it after the original, ending.
Sure.
And then when they released the extended cut, I still had a really hard time playing it again because the memories were still so fresh that none of my choices mattered. It doesn't matter. Who cares? I don't care anymore. I loved most of the game, but I became very resentful of it. And then I sort of just didn't think about Mass Effect up until the teaser got out.
Oh, wow.
I was like, oh shit.
Sure.
Of course, I played Andromeda, but I was disappointed in Andromeda, heavily disappointed. I played it when it arrived. Of course, I was hyped for it. With the teaser trailer for when he's the type of Western theme that they had going in the teaser trailers. Ghost Rider.
Yeah,
and I was like, holy shit, this is amazing. And I got into it again, played Andromeda, and I was like,
the marketing team did a great job before that game came out.
Yeah, for sure. But then, I don't hate it. I'm actually replaying it right now just because I'm gonna video about it. But yeah, it was a completely different vibe back then. And yeah, I started getting into the bubble again after Sean's Jacksepticeye's video.
Yeah,
that's when I really started making content.
My biggest shame with all of this is that. So I am new to Mass Effect as of the Legendary Edition.
That's not a shame. There's a lot of people that are new to it.
Well, but no, here's my shame. So I'm 34. So that means I was in college when all 3 games came out from the trilogy. What that also means is that I worked at GameStop through all 4 years of college, which also means I worked all 3 midnight releases for all 3 games. And never played any of them.
You were never interested.
I was a Call of Duty, Madden football. I was that guy in college. I was the jock bro. That's just, I didn't care about, I can do it with aliens. Like, whatever.
Right.
Like, I don't, like, yeah. And it's funny because, and that's just kind of how it was. And then I have 2 memories between then and the Legendary Edition where it was in like 2015, I randomly went down the rabbit hole of like the relationship compilations
Yeah.
and being like, oh, this is a game. Like I didn't like, because it was like
Giant.
people who had compiled like all three games and the romances for each character. And I remember watching like every one of them and being like, that's interesting, but that first game looks old and I am not going to play that. That looks rough. And then around 2000, probably 16 or 17, I started working with a guy at my job who like almost monthly would be like, well, this was in the lead up to Andromeda. He's like, hey, have you ever played Mass Effect? Because we're like the only two gamers in our office.
Yeah.
And he's like, have you ever played Mass Effect? I was like, nerd stuff. No, of course I haven't. And he just like every month would harp on me and be like, hey, you got to play it. And then Andromeda came out. I didn't know anything about Andromeda. I just saw the videos. I saw people making videos. I saw the big eyes. I saw the terrible animations. And I remember going to work and just dunking on this poor man and just being like, oh,
No.
good game, dork. Like, so then he keeps on me about it. And I never played Andromeda at the time. And then in 2020, they announced the Legendary Edition. And my big hang up with the trilogy was that it looked pretty bad, at least the first game. The Mass
Yeah.
Effect 3 still looks pretty good today, but
Yeah.
and even 2 is decent, but 1 looked pretty dated. And so the Legendary Edition got announced. He literally texted me like the moment it happened. He's like, eh? Like, come
Okay.
on. And so I was like, okay, whatever. Like I pre-ordered it. And then I just stopped thinking about it. And then that teaser trailer came out. And I was like, I don't know anything about this series. I don't know who that blue lady is. I don't know what's going on. But that music and just
Wow.
it like, I remember being like, I don't know why, but I didn't even know what it meant. See, I didn't know that there weren't like more games coming. Like I
Yeah.
didn't know that that was like a thing that people didn't know about. So I just remember being like, "Will it continue?" Well, yeah, it's Mass Effect, right? Like, of course, aren't there like 8 games? Like I just
Yeah.
didn't know.
Yeah.
And then Legendary Edition came out, and it's been well. So Legendary Edition came out in, was it March of 2021?
May, I
And
think it was.
oh man, and I'm on my 13th playthrough. So
God damn.
for whatever, and I don't, and I play other games. Like it's not like that's I play shooter games. Like I like other stuff as well, but I've obviously fallen, and
Yeah.
so
Falling into
it's
the rabbit hole. You can't get
yeah.
out. It's stuck.
So what I really enjoy with talking about people like you is getting like I experienced Mass Effect, the ups and the downs, as a 34-year-old man.
Yeah.
Not if I would have played them when they came out, I would have been like in my late teens and early 20s, and I would have enjoyed it. I wouldn't have it wouldn't have affected me the same way as it did as an adult. So so how do, like, I guess for you, do you feel like that's been a thing for you, that you had your initial playthrough back then and you played it and you got mad at 3 and all that? Like, do you feel like you look back at that differently now because of your age or anything like that?
Yeah, definitely. I actually think that's one of the reasons why a lot of people. Uh, I think. No, I'm just theorizing here, but I think that because I was basically in like in the group of toxic male gamer fans. I guess you could
Sure.
say that. I
Sure.
wasn't a mean asshole to people online or anything. I kept quiet about being mad about it. I just
You like
whined
had
about
the
it to my
attitude kind of.
yeah, to my brother. I was like, "Oh, fuck this shit game," or
Yeah.
I went off on it privately, and but I guess I was pretty toxic about it, if that's even a word you can say nowadays. But I realized that I was maybe a little too harsh on it back then because I am, of course, twice as old almost now, or well, what is it,
Sure.
10, 12 years ago? Uh, but yeah, 10 years ago, 10,
Yeah.
11.
Since 3. Yeah.
Yeah. So I can definitely see I have a different perspective of it. And since I hadn't replayed the games ever since the extended cut released, which was also back in 2012, I think, or
Hmm.
2013, I kind of had a fresh perspective when I started playing it again. I remembered basically everything,
Sure.
uh, but I was more open to the extended cut. So when I played it, I was like, "Oh, okay, now this does seem to make more sense now that I'm playing it right now."
Not perfect,
But
but better. Yeah.
yeah, and the thing is, I remember those days when people went off on it, and basically the entire internet just agreed that like the original endings just were not what people were promised. But I think that's
Sure.
also kind of where it all maybe not started, but it started to originate this idea of this sort of, gamer entitlement, I guess you could say. But
Sure.
then again, I do feel like there's a reason why that's a thing, and why it's not. I don't think people should necessarily look down upon the entitlement factor, because gamers or Mass Effect fans were promised, what was it, 16 different endings or whatever,
Oh,
and
really?
we just
Okay.
yeah, we didn't
Yeah.
get that. So I am
Hmm.
still I'm still irritated about it, but it's sort of like, No Man's Sky and games like that, where it's released in a shitty state and they fixed it and
Sure.
it's better now and it's actually pretty good now.
Mhm.
And I kind of let it go, and I accepted it for what it was, and I appreciated the devs working on it. Same as No Man's Sky, that is, that they
Mhm.
actually did put work into it to fix it. And that
Yeah,
feeling
that
of
game's
gratitude,
crazy at this
yeah, like
point.
the feeling of gratitude to the developers
Mhm.
sort of has overwritten
Sure.
the the toxicity, I guess. So, yeah, that's, I definitely have a different perspective today.
It's weird for me as someone who only played it recently. Well, like one, like releasing that legendary edition, even if it wasn't like a full remake, which it didn't need to be. The remaster was fine, I think, because it seems like the goal was for them to pull in people like me, and especially pull in people who are in their 20s, who, were literally children when these games came out, or maybe weren't born. and and for me, it's so interesting to go back and watch these documentaries and these interviews and stuff about like the cupcakes that people sent to the studio that were three different
Yeah,
colors but all the same color on the inside, about like all of this stuff. As someone who never experienced the original endings, I've only experienced the best way to play the game, right? And obviously that paints my take on it a lot differently. Like, where I see people who are maybe justifiably like burned by BioWare, even just by the trilogy, not even talking about Andromeda and Anthem and stuff like that. It's so interesting, but because for me, it just doesn't make sense. I'm like, come on, relax. But you have to put yourself in people's shoes back then. That like when I played Mass Effect the first time, I played the first one, and then I immediately played the second one, and then I immediately played the third one that was finished.
yeah,
And like you and other people played the first one and had to wait 2 years, and then
yeah,
played the second one and waited 2 years, and then
right.
played the third one and had to wait longer for the best version of it to come. So it's weird for me because I want to be like defensive about it sometimes, but and some people are just so ridiculous 10 years later, like so toxic and
Yeah,
so like vehemently awful. It's like, okay,
yeah,
bro, like you're like in your 30s now, chill out. Like
yeah.
it's like
There's
it's
still vitriol going on still. It's,
so, yeah,
a little
you can
silly because I look at myself and I was like, it's like I'm looking at my old self and I'm like, "Dude, you're being a fucking child.
yeah,
What the hell are you doing?" It's like, I know that it was a disappointment. We were promised a bunch of stuff as OG fans,
sure,
and we didn't necessarily get that, but at some point you have to let it go. And even if, I don't necessarily say that I trust them 100%, I do believe in the vision they've shown so far.
sure,
That's why I'm so hyped about it.
yeah,
And then also, content creation back then was also kind of different because there weren't very many YouTubers that made theory videos and stuff like that about what's going to happen in the next game. So
yep,
everybody kept having these different expectations of what was going to happen in Mass Effect 3 because of the different choices.
sure,
So when everything just boiled down to 3 choices, everybody just went absolutely wild, And that's why I think content creation is actually a good thing, because when
Mm,
you have these theories where we can discuss what could happen, what could not happen, what not, it opens people to different ideas and to not expect their own headcanon to be completely right. That's also
sure.
why I feel like whenever we're talking about Mass Effect theories, we have to make sure. I sometimes miss out on talking about that point, but we have to make sure that people understand that these are just theories, these are just ideas. It's fun to discuss them, but it's also important to discuss them because it opens up ideas to other people.
Sure.
Because that was what happened back in the day. We didn't have that. We just had a lot of different ideas. We like there was the Bioware forums, but
Yeah.
generally people had their own ideas of what was going to happen, and they didn't get it. And I think that's mainly why people got so pissed off, because we had all our different ways of interpreting it.
Well, I think now, and maybe not as much as I would like, I feel like with at least more like serious gamers, there's more of an understanding about game development and stuff now, where
Yeah.
like, you know, you go back and you listen to the stories from ex BioWare devs and stuff about, you know, what happened with Mass Effect 3 and things like that. And it's like with most games that come out to some type of controversy, you almost always end up getting like a post-mortem of like, oh, okay, that makes sense. Like that makes sense why that happened. Like there's almost always, and it's not necessarily an excuse. It's not necessarily a, you know, it doesn't mean that people can't be upset or mad, but a big thing for me, and this is coming from my Division days, is getting to know, like I got to know, you know, a dozen developers pretty closely. So when something was going crazy and the community was just hanging them for it, I could ask a dev like, hey, what's going on with that? And they would explain to me, yeah, that part of the engine, we thought we could fix that issue. And then we did, but it broke something else in a different part of the game. So we had to reverse it. And now we realize that we actually have to deconstruct a whole part of the engine and rebuild it to fix that one issue that started off. And you start to talk to people. One, you start to realize how complex all this stuff is. And two, you get to know the humans behind it. And I feel like that's something that's a lot more prevalent now than it was 10, 15 years ago. Partially because of people like you and people who make videos and try to teach people about and talk to people about games, new ideas, theories, stuff like that. But also because the game dev studios are more proactive about like, here's the people working on this game. Like, here's their faces. Here's their sweet little children. Please don't send them death threats. You know, like it's stuff like that. Like, I feel like they do a better job now. And so, yeah, it is funny as a new fan of the series, who I was like generally aware of what was happening. I remember the controversy of the end of 3 and stuff like that. But I remember it as like, it just passed me by. Like I remember being like, oh, people are pretty mad about that on dig.com, because that was before Reddit, you know, it was Dig. And or at least it was here in the States. And it was just, I don't know. It's interesting to look back on. I want, you know, like I have the tendency to want to like look down on the people and be like, oh, you were being so ridiculous. But like you kind of said, it's like you kind of get it. There was a lot of expectation. And then it came to what amounted to, because now was the refusal ending even in the original?
No, they added
So
that
it was
later
just 3.
Yeah, it was just 3. They
Okay.
said, of course, I think it was even Casey Hudson that said it, if I don't misremember. Maybe it was someone else. But someone said there was like at least 16 different endings. And Jeremy Johns on his channel, he brought it up in his review. He said like, yeah, technically there are 16 different endings, but the details are so small that it doesn't matter. And we
Okay.
didn't see what happened to the galaxy after the choice. We just saw the
Sure.
Normandy crash on the planet.
And we're
We
still
did.
dealing with those problems today with the lead up to this next game, which
Yeah,
will
what's gonna
we can
happen?
get into that. Yeah.
Yeah,
It's so before we get into the next game, because that's what you and I obviously have lots of fun talking about that. I do at least want to touch on Andromeda. And so do you remember what it was like for you in the lead up? Like, what were you thinking? Kind of what were things like for you before Andromeda came out? And then your reaction when it did come out? And then kind of how do you feel like that's changed to today?
Let's see here. I don't really remember where I was exactly when Andromeda released. I think I lived at home with my parents still. I was pretty late at moving out. I think I was like 24, 25,
Okay.
whatever. But up to Andromeda, when I started seeing the marketing for it, I fell in love with like the trailers, the ideas that they provided in the trailer. And then, of course, the animations and everything looked much better in the trailers because it was polished. The
Yeah.
graphics looked
Or
better.
it was straight up CGI.
Yeah, a lot of things you were like just blown away. Oh my god, I can't imagine they're gonna do all this. Oh my god. And then when I played through the game, I didn't necessarily have the same reaction as everybody else. I know
Mhm.
there was a lot of memes, but I basically didn't look at the internet for like the entire week. I just kept playing the game.
Sure.
And when I went down to the net and checked out what had happened,
You like crawled out of the
yeah, I'm like,
cave.
holy
Oh
shit, like
god.
what? Then I started to see the problem because people kept bringing these up, about the animation, and I started
Mhm.
thinking like, oh yeah, that makes sense. Why are they never moving their eyebrows? Why are they just staring into emptiness? And that's
Why
still a
is
problem.
every Asari the exact same face model
Yeah, exactly. That's also
besides
something I
the
wanted to.
horrifying PB model?
Yeah. She
Yeah.
actually looked pretty good if you remove
The
the black
makeup.
stuff.
Yeah.
She's so weird with the thing. It's ugh. So, yeah, but I didn't really have the same reaction there. I was
Mhm.
pretty tame about it. I played through it. I liked the exploration. I liked the
Mm.
combat. I did feel that, as many other people said, that the trekking with the Pathfinder, we're gonna see, or the not the Pathfinder. What's it called?
The Nomad.
Right. I haven't really gotten to that part yet, but I remember I hated driving around in it uh, across entire planets. At
Yeah.
at a point, okay, everything is just a big empty nothing right now, and there were so few things that you can find. As much as I like the driving of it, there was just, yeah, the worlds were very boring
Yeah.
generally. So yeah, that's what I remember, but I didn't really care that much. I kind of dropped the game after that. I was like, oh, okay, I played through it. It was okay. I
Mhm.
didn't. It wasn't that same reaction when I played the first Mass Effect.
Yeah, it was interesting for me because the first time I played Andromeda was Legendary Edition came out. I played through it once, used no guides, didn't get the results I really liked, but it was a good experience. I still tell people to this day, like through my podcast and stuff like that. I've had people be like, "Hey, I haven't played Mass Effect before, but you won't shut up about it. What's your suggestion?" And my suggestion for people's first playthrough, and maybe this is like demonic, is I tell people not to use a single guide. Don't use anything.
Oh,
Just play all three games. Just play it. It's gonna kind of suck. Things are gonna happen you're not happy about, and that's okay. That should, like, the suicide mission should be scary the first time you do it, and 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 then and then use guides and stuff. So I played through the game really quick, like I think 2 or 3 times after Legendary, and I was like, okay, I'm gonna burn myself out. I know there's this other game. I know it's gotten panned, but let's check it out. And so I played through Andromeda the first time, and I literally I mainlined it. I did all the main missions. I settled. I think I only settled whatever planets you have to settle.
yeah,
And then I finished it, and I remember being like, okay, like that's fine. That's like a solid 6 out of 10,
yeah,
whatever.
yeah,
And then I went through a few more Mass Effect trilogy playthroughs and went back because again I was like, okay, I don't want to burn out. There's no other games I want to play. Let me fully experience Andromeda. I won't do all the side missions. I'll do all of the loyalty missions, all the main missions again. I'll settle all the planets. I didn't even do a romance my first playthrough, so I'll romance somebody, and I did that, and I ended that experience with like, okay, like this is fine. This
yeah,
is okay. Like the loyalty missions I actually enjoy. I think they're actually pretty good in Andromeda for the most part. The main missions are cool. Like they're spectacles. It's like if with the Terminator, if Michael Bay made Mass Effect, It's these big spectacles and explosions and all that, right? And then, and so I actually kind of enjoyed that second playthrough. And then, literally about 2 months ago, I tried to play it a third time,
Yeah.
and that game is it's just it's so long, and it's not long like in a good way. Like it's like long and like a okay, come
Grindy.
on. And I got about a third of the way through, and and I don't mean this like in a derogatory way to anyone who listens who likes Andromeda. I'm probably never gonna play Andromeda again. Like I've had my experiences with it. It's fine,
Yeah.
decent game. I have a ton of gripes with it. My biggest gripe, and I'm kind of curious with your take on this, is and I've talked about this before. I actually, the animations and stuff, that stuff gets fixed. And unfortunately, it didn't really get fully fixed. The game still looks pretty bad.
Yeah.
I hate the design. And I won't go in too much of a diatribe about it. Loathe, I hate the design of the Angarans. I, I hate the way they look so much. I hate
Yeah.
how awkward they look. I hate their animations. I loathe the Angaran. I actually like Joel though. He's a great character. He's got a cool voice, cool guy. But like
Yeah.
my biggest issue with Andromeda, and I'm curious with your take, is I hate that Andromeda is is going to force the developers to acknowledge it moving forward. And it's not that it's a bad game. I hope it gets a sequel one day. I do. Like I hope all those things happen. I just think it was such a tough choice for them, because you could tell after 3 they were so scared to touch that. They did not want they because I remember, I think it was the Reykjavik video that he talked about how they definitely weren't going to do a direct sequel to 3. They considered doing the First Contact war game, and then they decided to just blow it all off and go to a different galaxy. And I get why. Like it makes sense. That's why this next game that comes out, I have so much respect for them, because it seems like it's going to be some kind of direct sequel to 4, or to 3 in some capacity. And that's a bold thing to take on.
Yeah.
It's so bold that the last game ran away from it, literally, to a different galaxy. And so, like, my biggest issue with Andromeda, more than anything, is it's going to force the hand of the developers in some capacity. It's not going to allow them to have complete creative freedom moving forward, because they have to, in some capacity, like they're being forced to acknowledge it, for better or
Yeah.
worse. I guess I'm kind of curious to what you think about that.
I agree. That's I wouldn't that's the thing also, because I don't want to make Andromeda people angry, or people who love Andromeda, I should say, because there are
Sure.
people who love both Andromeda
Yeah,
and the
for sure.
original trilogy. But I definitely think that they're definitely gonna have to uh like refer back to it at least. I don't know if they have to build a story around it. The thing is, they have talked about it a lot. Like they have referenced a lot of things, or hinted at, like Michael Gamble, of course, has hinted a
Especially
bunch of
him.
things,
Mm-hmm.
that Andromeda is still going to matter somehow.
Mm-hmm.
But it is entirely possible, Joe Rogan voice, and it's entirely possible that they're just gonna mention it. And that's the
Sure.
case, there is the high possibility that they're just gonna go full on done. I think Dan even said that, Big Dan, that he would actually prefer if they did that. He thinks so as well, that they're just gonna wash their hands of it, still refer to it to make some
Mm-hmm.
people happy, but go on with the story of the Milky Way. Um, I do think, though, as like Cal Elizabeth talked about,
Mm-hmm.
that it's possible for them to sort of redeem Andromeda in a way, because of the people that are working at it, on the game right now. Like I
Sure.
keep bringing her up, Mary DeMarle. God damn it, I'm gonna play Deus Ex just to show off what exactly she is responsible for. But I think with people like that in the lead, the likelihood that they're able to sort of bring the two galaxies together is a lot higher. And I think I wouldn't say that it's unfortunate that they have to, kind of include Andromeda because it could still matter and they could still
Mhm.
make it like that storyline could still matter in a good way.
Sure.
It's just how are they going to do that? Because there are so many complications moving forwards with Andromeda because you can't really, unless you go with the frozen Shepherd theory, you can't go on with Shepherd if you're going to
Yeah.
have an Andromeda sequel, and you can't have an Andromeda sequel if you're going to proceed with Shepherd. So it's like,
Yeah.
okay, what are they going to do? The bigger majority that we know, we can see that everywhere, the bigger majority of the fan base wants the trilogy to be like it they want it to be based on the trilogy and it
Yeah.
to be a sequel. There is a I can't say numbers here, but looking at my analytics, just it's just a
Sure.
small taste. It's just a drop in the pond, really. But I can say around maybe 10% of people want an Andromeda sequel, at least from my channel.
I think that's
90% want to
and
see.
well, there's it's an interesting bunch because I don't necessarily not want an Andromeda sequel one day. I just really don't want it next. Like
Right.
the next Mass Effect game can be a lot of things, but it just kind of doesn't make sense that it could even be an Andromeda sequel. One, because I'm pretty sure everything they've shown us so far has been in the Milky Way. So even what they've messaged, but even just from from EA's point of view, I find it really hard to believe that anyone at EA was like, "Oh, Andromeda, sure, make another one." Like, don't go back to the roots and kind of
It was a
because
project in because the Quarian arc just never came out because the EA was like, "Oh, okay, this ain't working."
yeah,
So, no.
it's interesting, and I think that the problem is that I think that the people who are either like more Andromeda fans or like both, but like really like Andromeda, I feel like they almost feel like they're kind of like an attacked group, and they are to a point,
For sure.
and so I feel like that has almost like redoubled their like enthusiasm for it, where like if no one just cared, they would like the game, but it wouldn't be that big of a deal. But because people like tell them they shouldn't like it, and no one should do that. Like, people should like what they like. Like, I don't.
Yeah.
It's stupid. It's stupid to tell other people what they should or shouldn't like. It's dumb. It's pointless. But I sometimes they've almost been like forged like a diamond. And into being like super Andromeda fans by people telling them they shouldn't be. And that's fine. Like, I get it. Like, I understand. I just think that there has to be some acknowledgement of like it wouldn't make sense, like probably just like financially, to do a game that's focused on a game that like in some capacity hurt EA. That hurt. Now, I believe financially the game actually did okay. I think it actually made money. I'm sure it didn't make a ton of money, but it's not like it like was a big loss. But it definitely hurt the reputation of BioWare, and not to mention, and it's one of my favorite things to bring up whenever whenever I talk to people about Andromeda. Andromeda probably could have been like No Man's Sky. Like, they could have spent time on it. And one of the biggest things that always just makes my like face collapse into itself is to realize that they cut development on Andromeda to focus on Anthem. Which, like, it's wild, right? Because like, as much as the issues I have with Andromeda, they didn't even take Anthem as far as they did with Andromeda. Like, it was an even more pulled back experience from what it was supposed to be. And it's so interesting to me that like in a world where Anthem never existed, I could see that Andromeda probably could have been redeemed more so than it was. It could have been fixed more. They could have released the DLCs. We could have seen the Quarian arc, like all of those things. But that's all happened. And so like, I think the big issue that people have in gaming communities, and I saw it with The Division, I've seen it with all the games I play, including Mass Effect, is people think that even the opinion of the like online communities like means anything, and it doesn't. Like
Mhm.
people don't realize. Say right now, there's 100,000 people in the Mass Effect community across everything
Yeah,
who talk about Mass Effect every day, who watch your videos, who watch my videos, who, consume Mass Effect stuff to this day when really
mhm,
there's no reason to. It's just be out of fandom.
yeah,
That 100,000 people represents a literally drop in the water of the
yeah,
entire Mass Effect fan base.
yeah,
And people need to realize that like gaming companies look at those 95% of people who don't participate in Twitter and YouTube
yeah,
videos and all that, like who just buy the game, play it, and then never touch it again because they get that 60-70 bucks.
yeah,
And that's who they make. Like they don't just make the game for the hyper fans who know everything about Garrus's armor and know everything about the Ryder twins' birth or
yeah,
whatever. Like
yeah,
they don't make the, like they try to please that group that we all speak to,
yeah,
but when you have a game that's going to sell 5 to 10 million copies, the 100,000 people on Twitter or whatever, they're loud. We are
mm,
loud, but we're
yeah.
still not like, we're not everyone. We don't represent everyone.
No, very true. I do think, however, that the fandom is very important because if when it comes to like super fans, what's so good about super fans, essentially, people that are so invested in the universe, is that when you have a large group of them and they basically agree on a lot of things, then you have sort of a roadmap on what works and what does not work
Sure.
in order to get more super fans. Because even, that's why I think percentages of majorities of people are super important. And that's why I think they release these, what are they called? Polls, basically, where they ask people, what did you choose, whatever, or
Mm-hmm.
they basically collected a bunch of information, sent it out as screenshots,
And that's
because
from
that
everyone.
information, yeah,
Yeah.
that information is super valuable, and mostly that information uh, does go hand in hand with the online opinion.
Sure.
And
Sure.
I do think it's really important for BioWare to listen to the fans a lot. Maybe not, go through everything that the fans want. So maybe my frozen shepherd theory, that's just fan fiction. I wouldn't
Sure.
necessarily want them to insert that in the next game just because I like it and because my
Sure.
followers like it, because that would just be dumb.
Yep. Yep.
They have to do what's best for the story, of course, but I
And
think
what they're
what they
passionate
need,
about too.
yeah, what they just need to be or need to do is to look at what people generally think is a good idea or what people liked most from the games and then try
Sure.
to improve on those parts. And the problem definitely with Andromeda, which I will of course bring up in my other video when I release that,
Mm-hmm.
is Andromeda basically did a 180 and started focusing on a bunch of other things that people didn't want, and we all saw what happened. Basically, of
Yep.
course, there is the issue with the development time and
Mm-hmm.
everything that happened to make it a rushed game. But
Yeah.
all
It was
the
a
effort
mess.
they
It
spent
was a
on it,
mess. Yep.
yeah, the all the effort they actually spent on the game went to the wrong things,
Mm-hmm.
and they should have just gone completely in the route of making a really good script, making really good characters, making sure that your choices really do matter, that there's an idea that you can play through the game so many times and just not get sick of it.
Mm-hmm.
But instead, we got to the part about the combat and the gameplay mechanics, and those were just really never the reason why people fell in love with Mass Effect from the start. It was,
No one loves Mass Effect 1, even the Legendary Edition, for the combat.
no,
I don't hate it. I actually, it's fun in its own unique way, but I definitely don't play Mass Effect 1 because I'm like,
no,
oh yeah, I can't wait to have a janky cover system
yeah,
and pick up 300 guns on every mission I have to rifle through. Like,
mm,
yeah, it's it's interesting. What I have a lot of faith. The issue I have, and I talk about it in my stream a lot, and I try to talk about it in my videos, is every time I see someone propose what they think is going to happen, or when I'm doing it myself, I think of it in three ways. I think about what I want personally as a fan,
mm,
my personal ideal, what I think would be best for the franchise in the long run,
mm,
and then what I think is actually going to happen or what's
yeah,
possible.
Mm.
And so like when I see someone say, they're gonna send another mission to Andromeda with Liara and Frozen Shepherd and the stuff, my gut reaction personally is like, no, please don't do that, that's too much.
Yeah.
My reaction from those other two ways is different though, and so it's like a big one for me is the question on, should they bring back Shepherd? Should Shepherd be like an NPC like Hackett or Anderson or someone, or should Shepherd just be done? And in my brain, it's like, well, personally, I want Shepherd again. Like, it's super simple for me. I'm a new fan though. I haven't sat with this franchise for 15 years. He's still new to me, so I want more. Or she, depending on your preference. I'm an M Shep guy. But what I think is best, but then I think about, well, what's best for the franchise in the long run? And I think that to, multiple new generations of gamers, they're going to be trying to sell this new game to, as well as all of the older folks and the OG fans, it might be best to have a new character that they can identify with, kind of what they tried to do with Ryder, but better, hopefully. And then what do I think they're actually going to do? And I don't know. I don't know. I have no idea. And so it's like, I get so because with this content creation and stuff, and this started with the Division, where I didn't want to be one of the toxic people. I always try to take other people's, like, I try to see it through their eyes. And so the people who want this to be basically like an Andromeda sequel, or the people who want to play as Ryder again, which every time I hear that, I like grab my headphones, and I don't really, but like, I don't want to play as Ryder again, but I try to understand why they do. And so it's like, it's so complicated. And what's so funny about it, and Kala, I think, said something about it. I made a video. She made that Andromeda Will Continue video. I made one that was inspired by her, but basically kind of gave my take on all the things she talked about, just to show like, we're all seeing what we want to see. Like, we're all seeing the things that we hope for, right? And she made a comment on my video that was very good, where she basically said, like, I'm curious to go back in like 3 years when this game comes out, 3 or 4 years, and look at all of this stuff and see if any of us were even close on anything, and that we probably aren't. We're all probably wrong. It's gonna, like, this point is really fun, and I think that you and I suspect you agree. This is the fun part, because we don't know anything, so we can say whatever the hell we want. Everyone can have, with the teasers they've released, I think things are starting to narrow down a little bit, and I think they're a lot more narrowed down than other people do, and that's fine, because it's all kind of vague right now. But I just I don't know, man. It's interesting.
Yeah. I would say that I think we're much more narrow now since N7 Day than we were a year ago. Especially when you connect all the dots and you see, oh, okay, Geth, okay, Liara, okay, we hear Liara, okay, we hear. I think you said that you don't think it's the Geth.
I don't think it's a
something
Geth.
else.
I think it's a voice modulator.
I think it's the Geth, because I think if they showed the creator, I don't think that they did that and just.
Oh, I think the Geth are definitely in the next game, 100%. I have no doubt. Either we're going to be bringing them back or whatever.
You mean you think it's just a way to throw us off to make sure that, oh, okay, we think it's the Geth, but the Geth have another role than we think they have. Oh, okay, that's pretty smart.
I think she's talking to someone, and we have her comms hacked, and we can hear her, but we can't hear who she's talking to. Kind of like in like the Shadow Broker DLC and stuff, where like you could hear one side of the conversation but not the other. That's what I assume. I mean, I have no idea, but I think that poster. Exactly. But I mean, I think that poster last year was a big giant. The Geth are coming back. Like we're bringing them back in one way or the other, or maybe they're still around. It depends on what they do. See, that's the thing, is that we could talk for 3 more hours about this stuff, because you start talking about like, what are they going to do with the endings? Who are they going to bring back? Where are we going to go? Like all of that stuff. It's just so big. And I saw there was some reaction on Reddit to someone posted someone's video that was doing some of this speculation, and some people were being kind of like grumpy about it, being like, well, we won't even know what they're doing for like 2 more years. People should just calm down. I'm like, we understand that. Like, you and I understand that. Like Kala Elizabeth and Big Dan and all, like, we all understand that we're going to find out the truth eventually. But let's have a little
Yeah.
fun until then. Like, why
Yeah,
not?
I
Like,
get
why not guess?
I've actually I've gotten more annoyed the last few months by comments like, "We don't know anything yet. You're overanalyzing things."
Yeah.
That's the point.
Yeah, I
God damn
am.
it.
You
Like,
don't
I
have to
think
watch.
everybody understands that we're overanalyzing things, but that's the fun part. Everybody knows that theorizing about stuff is fun.
Yeah,
It's the fun part. And then
exactly.
when the game releases, we have nothing more to theorize about except maybe,
What comes
the
next?
inevitable ending, what comes next or whatever.
Sure.
But leading up to a game, it's always just super fun to engage with
Mhm.
the community, each other's theories, to
Yeah.
celebrate the universe, and just to not talk about it and not make theory videos and stuff like that. That basically kills the entire discussion, which is the opposite of what BioWare wants people to do.
Well,
They
yeah, like
want,
what you and I and what everyone is doing is obviously what they want. They aren't putting out vague hints and all this stuff because they don't know.
yeah,
They could give us by now. They should know basically exactly what the next game is.
yeah,
They may not have it all written. It may not all be completely finalized, but I mean, because we have to remember, they've been in some kind of pre-production at least since that teaser trailer. It may
yeah.
have been a handful of people in a room.
Well, Michael was actually
Oh,
he's been
okay.
game before they even, made that teaser trailer and whatnot. He had been thinking about it for a while, so they
Okay.
have for sure had an idea of where the next game could go. It's just that they really started for real this year, I think.
Yeah, especially, I mean, you obviously having the narrative director is a pretty big deal. So, and I have a theory, and this is something I'm kind of curious to what you think. So, we all know, and obviously, I've kind of learned this in hindsight to a point, but Casey Hudson did return for a short stint. And I have always kind of assumed like that should have been the time when they were beginning pre production on this next game. And my assumption has been that they basically said, hey, come back and help us kick off this next game.
Mm,
And I assume they knew he was starting his own studio, but that was
mm,
going to take time. He had to find, especially I think it was during the pandemic. So
yeah,
he had to get a building. He had to find employees, which unfortunately he's stolen like half of BioWare's people, but
yeah,
that's a different story. I was so happy. My first BioWare dev followed me and I was so excited. And then like 2 weeks later, they announced they were going to humanoid, which is still cool. Like I'm not going to complain, but I suspect that he probably came back to just help them set some of the foundation,
mm.
or maybe he
The
didn't, and maybe you know more than I did.
No, but that's possible. I don't really know anything about, I know that what did he return for? Wasn't that for Dreadwolf? Dragon Age 4?
I don't know. I remember when I read some articles and basically it was I was under the impression he came back for just general consulting. So my assumption is that after the events of Andromeda and Anthem, they were like, oh, like come back. We need some help. Like,
Didn't really know
um,
about that. That's new to me.
yeah. So I would need to look more into it. And obviously, I'm sure people, the one thing I've learned about BioWare is that with Ubisoft Massive, I got to know a bunch of devs and I may or may not have found out a bunch of stuff long before the game came out.
Mhm.
Um, BioWare devs don't talk to anybody.
Don't talk
They
to
don't talk to anybody.
on my ass and been like, "Hey, have you talked to Michael Gamble? You seem suspiciously to know a bunch." And like, no, I'm just digging through the internet. No, the first time I actually got some form of engagement from Michael was when I wrote to him on Twitter and asked, "Hey, are you moving platforms?" Because of the Twitter shebang thing, and he was like, "Ah, I'm staying." That's that's the
Yeah.
only interaction I've gotten with Michael or
Yeah.
anyone from Bioware. So
Yeah,
no,
he's
they
he's
haven't.
like vaguely interacted with me a couple times, but that is like a lockdown fortress,
Yeah,
man. Like they're I mean, maybe stuff will leak one day, who knows? But they definitely it's been and it makes sense because of all of the stuff that they've been through over the last 10 years.
yeah.
But it's that was definitely an interesting thing I
Good thing they're
noticed.
keeping quiet about it because the thing is, as much as I'd like to like have a source that just feeds me information, it's like, oh, feed me Seymour.
Hmm.
I think it's better that they don't because The fact is, if I were to figure something out or get to know about, what they're doing, that would essentially, if that would influence my content
Mhm.
creation, because then I would
100%.
have of what they're doing. So it's just better that I don't find anything out, because that helps me, because it makes me excited that I don't have to, know anything, and I can keep being excited. But I don't think it's really a good idea to have any like real, information from the devs, because it could definitely. I don't know because I've never had it, but I think it could. You know more than I do if it could, actually change your perspective on your content creation.
It absolutely did.
Yeah,
100%. Yeah.
and I mean, Mass Effect is so huge on story. So if they told me something about the story, I'd probably, talk about it to some extent without people realizing it, and I don't think that would be a good idea.
Yep. Yeah, and it's such a it's one of those things that like everyone wants to know the information. Like I want to know about this next game, but once we find out, then it's done. Then the excitement for that is over. Now exciting to it'll be exciting to actually play the game and stuff like that. But we're in a moment right now, which is fun. And I think it's okay for people to enjoy that.
Yeah, being able to just discuss, talk, theorize. It's just so fun. And the thing is, I've always experienced that whenever just the thing comes out and we know it, it kind of, as much as maybe the thing is good, like like God of War Ragnarok, there was a
Hmm.
lot of going on about God of War Ragnarok, especially from Captain Kuba. But when it did get released, the discussion around it kind of died all of a
Yeah.
sudden. Like it
Yeah.
completely, but
Yeah.
because, oh, okay, this wasn't at all what people thought it was. Oh, and this,
Sure.
oh, you know, so it kind of killed a lot of the discussion. I saw several God of War creators just getting completely burnt out because they were like, oh, okay, that's it then. And then you have to like restructure your whole idea
Sure.
of the franchise. Yeah, I think it's just better they're drip feeding us small hints, because that gives me so much more ammunition to do stuff.
Sure. Well, no, what they're doing right now is perfect. And I think even from like a transparency point of view, like I was, pretty on like when the Division 2 was about to come out and through its whole development, they did some drip feeding, but not nearly as good as what BioWare is doing for a game that's still multiple years away. Here's the weird thing, and I talked about this to a few people, I think in my stream the other day, where I was like, do we know more about Mass Effect, the next one, than Dreadwolf, which is a game that's probably coming out next year, or well,
But
this year now.
I think we kind of do. Like, for some strange reason, we don't really, because we know that Dreadwolf is set in
Solus and
whatever,
stuff like that. Yeah,
the country.
I forget. I know what you're talking about. I forget though.
Yeah, we know what the setting is going to be. We've seen small demos of like the action, it being sort of like third person shoulder combat, a little reminiscent of Mass Effect 3 and
Hmm.
God of War, which I'm like, oh yeah, I'm
Sure.
fucking, yeah, hell yeah.
Yeah. After the
But
Combat of Inquisition, I'll take almost anything
yeah,
else.
that seemed like a cool idea. But then just generally, I don't really have an idea of what they're doing with Dragon Age Dreadwolf. Um, we don't know yet who is the main character. There's just a bunch of things that you thought we'd know by now. And comparing that to Mass Effect, I would say that we basically know as much about Mass Effect
Sure. Sure.
as we know about Dragon Age Dreadwolf, which is super weird. Uh,
Do
I'm
you
really. Hmm?
are you worried about how whether Dreadwolf is good or not, how that will impact the excitement for the Mass Effect game?
No,
Same. I'm in the
I
same
don't
boat.
think, because generally most people from my channel, and I say this again, most people, numbers wise, don't are not huge fans of Dragon Age. Most of them are Mass Effect fans specifically.
Sure.
That's again just part of the audience, a small part of the audience, but I still don't think that as people are saying, "Oh, this is BioWare's last game before they collapsed, before EA
Mm-hmm.
shut them."
Yeah.
Last time it was Andromeda. Last time it was Anthem.
Anthem. Mm-hmm.
I know BioWare is a very recognized brand overall. I think BioWare is one of the last studios EA would just shut down because
Sure.
of the potential of them making an absolutely mind-blowing, amazing game. Of course, they could just hand off the IP like Mass Effect to another company. Uh, who knows? Maybe they do a better job or not with the new
Sure.
games.
Sure.
But I don't think that just if Dreadwolf fails, I don't think that means that the next Mass Effect is going to fail because, as we know, there are different people working on the games.
Yep.
Like, Mary DeMarle, example, she
Mm-hmm.
is just working on the next Mass Effect. She's not
Sure.
working on Dreadwolf. Mike is not working on Dragon Age. He's just working on Mass Effect. There are just a bunch of people that specifically work on that game. And no, Mass Effect in general, I think, even despite I think Inquisition actually is the game that has made the most money over the years
That would make
for
sense. Sure.
but Mass Effect is, unfortunately, I'm just going to say this like it is, it's the more recognized brand.
Mm-hmm.
It's when people think of BioWare, they usually think about
Shepard.
Mass Effect.
Yeah,
Shepard.
they see Shepard's face. Yeah. I mean, it's just.
And then there's Dragon Age. But the crazy thing is, Dragon Age is just not necessarily as talked about. I mean, you can just look up the numbers on Google Analytics. Like, people
Sure.
aren't talking about Dragon Age at all compared to Mass Effect. You could say that's because of the Legendary Edition and
Mm-hmm.
content creators and whatnot, but still, I think it's just the more known brand. And
Sure.
I don't think that just because if Dreadwolf, and God forbid, Dreadwolf is horrible, I really hope it's amazing.
Mm-hmm.
But if it isn't amazing, I don't think that's gonna make sure that the next game for Mass Effect is gonna be that it's off the tables. No.
Well, for me, it's a matter of just knowing and looking into the development of Dreadwolf, and that it's been rebooted, I think, like twice or three times. Like, it was supposed to be multiplayer co-op at one point, and they took that out. Like, the game has been through development hell, and like, Dreadwolf probably shouldn't be good. I hope it is, but when you see what it's gone through as a game, it's very much in, okay, let's just get it out there territory.
Yeah.
And that stinks because people love Dragon Age. And I think it seems like there hasn't been any bad news about that game in like a couple years. I feel like it seems like it's been stable. So I wouldn't be surprised if they put out a solid product. But when I've seen people say like, well, we'll see how this Dragon Age game is, and then I'll see whether or not I'm excited for Mass Effect. I'm like that's just a weird take to me. I just don't think I don't think it's as connected as people maybe want it to be.
I don't think so either, because of course, if Dreadwolf is a disaster and it's like the worst game of the year, that would probably bring BioWare to their knees. And if the next Mass Effect is equally as horrible, I could imagine probably all these IPs being shipped off to someone else and BioWare just being deconstructed completely.
But probably just give everything to Respawn. Everything Respawn does is great.
Yeah, like that's the only thing I could see happening.
Sure.
Is if both franchises fail, okay, they're done. But I don't think that BioWare is done just because Dreadwolf would be horrible. I think they still have, they have two shots left, basically. I'd say
probably.
But then again,
maybe not. Okay, well, we can kind of start wrapping things up a little bit. I do have a couple of quick questions for you. I have, and this is going to be as blunt as possible. Do you personally want to play a Shepard again? This isn't what you think is actually going to happen. This isn't what you think is best for the franchise. This is you. You sit down with those sticks and you hit the on and you hit start game and it pops up. Do you want Shepard to be the person you're pushing around, or do you want it to be something different?
I'm going to say yes, I do. because I love Mark Meer, I love Jennifer Hale. I think their performances are amazing. I think they're amazing voice actresses or voice actors.
Hmm.
And I think that they are both such huge fans of the games themselves and they want to come back so very hard. And just because they are to me like what Luke Skywalker is to Star Wars.
Sure.
It's
Yeah.
it's that's just simple. And the thing is, for me, for some really weird reason, or I think a lot of people could agree with this, is that I don't perceive, as much as I say that Shepard is the player character, Shepard is supposed to be us. I don't see Shepard as us.
Nope. I don't either.
I see Shepard as Mark Meer. I see
Yep.
Shepard as Jennifer Hale. They
Yep.
are Shepard. And so I see them as characters, no matter if you use the default face or if you use the customized face. Just
Yep.
when you hear their voices, you're like, I know what Shepard's story is.
Hmm.
It doesn't matter if it goes Renegade or Paragon, because the story in overall is just the same.
Kind of goes
It
down the
ends,
same tunnel.
yeah,
Sure.
basically. So yeah, I would absolutely fucking love it to play as Shepard again, just because I love those guys.
Yep.
Uh, a new character or writer, if they could pull it off, sure. If they could pull it off,
Sure.
that's I'm on board, but I would prefer Shepard, for sure. What do you think?
I
What
want
would you like?
Shepard again. I want
Yeah,
Shepard again. I'm very much in a mood for the next game of I have this like very defined vision of what I want it to be, fully acknowledging that's not going to happen. Like knowing that my exact now maybe bits and pieces may actually happen, but I want Shepard again. Because like every time someone says, well, Shepard's story is over. Shepard's story literally ends on a cliffhanger.
yeah,
Like it's I hate like that point. And the big thing for me is that and this is me as a newer fan, and so maybe I don't fully understand. But the original endings, Shepard dies in all three, as far as we know, right? And then they did the extended cut, and they had this ending where if you worked extra hard through all three games, basically, if you do all the right stuff, you get this special ending that heavily suggests that Shepard lives.
the interesting part there is the Shepherd breath thing. That
Mm-hmm.
was also the original cut. So that was the best ending even there, that you see Shepard's breath,
Oh,
but didn't get the whole shabacle of them talking about what happens after the galaxy. You don't get the thing where your love interest does not hang up the sign. That was all,
sure.
but the breath was still in the original cut, so it
Didn't
was
know
still there.
that. Okay, so like they don't
Even
put
more,
that in. They don't put that in for no reason. The same with like I've come to the conclusion that 2020 teaser trailer that confirmed the next game. I'm sure that game, that trailer, like I know people have like, and I think you've even made a video on it of like, let's try to figure out what planet that was on and stuff. Like, I suspect that whole trailer is just a proof of concept. The game is coming back. Here's some things that look familiar. Here's some sounds you've heard before. This is Mass Effect.
yeah.
But you do not, and this is me as a newer fan, but I still am very passionate about it. You do not put Liara Tassoni on camera holding up a piece of N7 helmet
Yeah.
and expect me to think, because I see this comment all the time, well, there's lots of N7s. It could be anyone. It's just you don't, because and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but didn't they kind of do that with an N7 with Andromeda, where they kind of vaguely like, here's an N7, who is it? Like,
Yeah, the difference is there is that in Andromeda you see someone in a completely different armor,
yeah, the initiative
different
armor.
a different design, and it's
Hmm.
an Andromeda. And you're like, oh, okay, how would Shepard make it to Andromeda? Of
Sure.
course not. The big thing here is that it's Liara that's picking up an N7 piece of a helmet that looks like it comes from the old armor, and is like,
Hmm.
oh, oh, okay, I see what they're doing. And then the Reapers,
The
as you
Dead
said,
Reapers, yeah.
that entire scene could just be made up for the
Mhm.
trailer. But I do think that the elements that we see are still important. That the
These
Dead
are
Reaper,
very carefully picked out.
yeah, it's just they're giving us tastes of what it is, but this entire trailer is just, it's nothing we're gonna see, of
Yeah.
course.
Mhm.
But other things are supposed to make you feel like, "Oh, okay, they're referencing Andromeda a little bit just to make sure that, oh, okay, it
Mhm.
happened, it's canon, it did happen." But we're focusing on the next game after the 3rd game. Come back, guys, come on. That's how I saw it,
Mhm.
that's why I reacted like I did. I was like, "Oh, they're telling me to come back." Oh,
Sure.
that's how I reacted, and a lot of people did.
I just think I think it would be a very bold move for them to do that and then be like, we're just kidding. Like, just kidding. It's 1,000 years later and everyone's dead except
Yeah,
Liara. And
is,
it's
the theory I did yesterday, like the Frozen theory live stream,
mhm,
I only thought that up because people have been on my ass again about, "Oh, I want to see Shepard so much." And then I have had equally as many people be on my ass about, "But I want to see Andromeda matter."
mhm.
Well, and you're like, well, okay, let's do a thing where we see both Ryder and Shepard. It's possible, we know that it is possible, but
Mhm.
and your other squad mates are probably dead. So do you really want that? Because
Well,
that's the implication.
and that theory is a good one to explain to people as well, to be like, okay, this is how many boundaries of the grounded world that they established in this series. These are the boundaries they're going to have to push to make
Yeah,
that work. Like,
yeah,
both from a story point of view of them having to, jump through hoops, and again, you start to ask questions of like, do they want to jump through hoops for Andromeda at this point? No,
yeah,
because like my whole thing is that I really want this next game to be a very Milky Way focused game after the Reaper War in some capacity, to reestablish the franchise. And then if it does well, ship us back to Andromeda. Let's see what's going on there too. But like, one before the other, because the whole
yeah,
idea of them doing like a dual, I've seen like the dual timeline. Maybe we'll play half the game in Andromeda and half the game in the Milky Way. Like, then you're splitting your workforce 50-50, or you're splitting your time 50-50, and you're going to get 50% of both instead of
yeah,
100% of one. And that's me. This franchise and BioWare needs 100% of something.
yeah,
And and I've seen people be like, well, they can use those 3 relays that the Geth put together for the telescope, and they can shoot people to Andromeda, or they can use Meridian to send
yeah,
people back in
yeah,
time and stuff. And I'm just like, maybe, I don't know. None of us know. But like, I'm a very keep it simple, stupid person, where it's just, what's the simplest way they can do things. Because like for me, like a big thing I talk about all the time is that like the initiative had to be a just insanely gigantic operation
yeah,
to build these arcs, to build the Nexus. So something that happened recently, I just assumed they did all of that like on some like hidden away. I never realized in the opening of Andromeda they did this stuff behind the moon. So then, so now it just drives me crazy every time I play the trilogy, because I play Mass Effect 2 and 3. And could they not have in the Legendary Edition just added a couple voice lines that go through like the news, where they're like,
yeah.
the initiative is now recruiting people to go on the Andromeda mission, like to just at least retcon a little bit
That would be cool.
because oh, it would have been perfect. I think they almost needed to do that, because it would literally just be audio files to put in. Game development's hard. I'm not going to act like it's easy, but like,
No,
because once I realized that at least the arc, that the Hyperion was docked behind the moon, like people would have known about this situation. Like
yeah,
it wasn't like this was a top secret thing like I initially thought it was. So it's like they're going to have to figure that stuff out. But what I think is really interesting is they could do a Milky Way story that is original and involves Shep or not, whatever. But I want a huge side story that could be breadcrumbs to an Andromeda sequel, to be learning about the initiative. Let's
Yes.
see their shipping docks. I want to see where they built these ships. Is the mysterious benefactor still in the Milky Way? Did they stay behind? Did they go with the ship? I think that some of that stuff is in question. Like, they can explore a lot of Andromeda and talk a lot about Andromeda without going to Andromeda.
Yeah, but I also think that that's a good idea that you mentioned before. Focusing on the Milky Way first and making a true sequel to the third
Hmm.
game. I think, looking at it financially, that's probably the best move, because if the next Mass Effect is a smash absolute hit, super amazing, everybody loves it, most people love it, as you said, they can then just, maybe they could hire more people, get a smaller team working on a sequel like they do for The Witcher right now. They
Yeah.
have multiple Witcher games for
Hmm.
different studios in CDPR. So Bioware could do that if they could just nail the next Mass Effect, or even Dragon Age Dreadwolf.
Sure.
Open another smaller studio or something and focus on making a sequel to Andromeda and
Hmm.
establish that and make that sort of its own thing. And then they could, as you said, leave breadcrumbs from the next Mass Effect game to Andromeda, and then maybe there's some form of connection.
Sure.
Ryder and Shepard never meet, of course,
No.
because there's a 600-year time gap, but we get two different stories that overlap with each other throughout the years. And I
Yeah.
think that could be a super smart way to build the franchise and make people be like, oh shit, we have Andromeda fans that start loving the next Mass Effect, and then we have people who love the next Mass Effect and OG fans starting to like Andromeda,
Hmm.
and it just starts mixing in a good way. I think that's a good idea. I think that's
Yeah.
the best, like, the smartest financially, the smartest choice for EA overall.
And that kind of goes back to what I was talking about before with considering the entire fan base.
Yeah,
And the thing is, like, I never want it to seem like I'm being like antagonistic to Andromeda players and stuff like that. I'm not a huge fan of their game. It's fine. That's just my opinion. I want them to get a sequel one day, because if
yeah,
they get a sequel one day, that means that the Mass Effect franchise and BioWare are extremely healthy.
yeah,
And so that's a good thing. And I would love them to have another crack at Andromeda to give us more than two new species that basically look the same, and
yeah,
to give us a better story, and to expand to the whole galaxy, not just one star system, and
yeah,
to actually make a Mass Effect game in Andromeda instead of that thing that we got. I
yeah,
want to see a fully realized Andromeda game, because it'd be really cool,
yeah,
but we
for
didn't
sure.
get that, and I don't want more of what we got. Like, a big thing I've said repeatedly is I really hope Andromeda was a lesson and not inspiration.
Yeah,
There's parts of Andromeda that are really cool. I love that when you park your ship by a planet, you can look out the window and see that planet. I love that the Nexus is, it reminds me of, well, Andromeda is basically Mass Effect 1, right?
yeah,
Like they basically tried to do a similar thing. I love that the Nexus is this big sprawling ship you can run around and do stuff. I hate the fetch quest. I hate
yeah,
some of the side missions on it, but I like the idea of it. Like, Andromeda does a bunch of cool stuff. I'm actually one of the few people who doesn't love the combat. I like the jump jets, but the gunplay I don't care for. And the cover system's atrocious, but the skills in the jump jets are pretty cool.
yeah.
I'm also one of the
Totally.
few people who doesn't like switching my class. I
Yeah.
think you should be a class, and I think that should be your class for the whole thing. But that's like my old school grumpy old
Don't get
man,
credits on the medbay and reset it.
or
That's
something like
fine.
that. Yeah, yeah. So it's um, I don't know. I just I could go on forever. Well, I will kind of
Andromeda's
wrap.
it's not amazing, for
What's
sure.
that? Sorry.
Andromeda's combat is good, but it's not amazing.
Yeah.
I think actually Mass Effect 3 has better combat, to be honest.
Overall, it's more refined for sure. And I'm really curious to, I mean, I know I've basically concluded, I'm sure you have too, and other people, like, this game's going to be on Unreal Engine 5.
Oh yeah.
So, and people need to remember that the Mass Effect 2 and 3 combat was the way it was because Unreal is the Gears of War engine, and the Coalition and Epic work very closely together developing that engine. So if you want a preview of what the next game's combat will be similar to, you can look at Gears of War 5, and that's probably, or Gears of War 6 whenever it comes out. It's at least going to be the basic feel, because that's the basic combat of Unreal Engine games. Obviously, I'm sure, BioWare will do its own thing, but it's just, I'm I guess I'll kind of start to wrap it up with well, let's talk about, release dates, because that's a popular topic. What is your honest gut feeling about when we may actually see this next game?
I keep saying this, but I won't promise anything because I don't know anything actually.
Obviously.
My gut feeling says late 2025, holiday 2025 somewhere. So that would put it around the 5-year mark ever
Hmm.
since that first teaser trailer. So I think that's a good point. And because of what we know about the Unreal Engine 5 is that it's supposedly, now this is what I've learned from people who have used it and stuff, it's much more advanced than Frostbite.
Oh
It
yeah.
can be overwhelming to some people
Hmm.
that have never used Unreal before, but they have a much better user sort of feedback system. So
Hmm.
if you need help, there's like a system for where you can look up like how to troubleshoot things and just learn how to do things, which is something that Frostbite doesn't have because you have to build everything from the ground up. So
Well, they have to
uh,
call up your friends in Sweden up at
yeah,
Dice to get help with it, and that's a
exactly.
pain.
Yeah, and Unreal Engine 5 is simple because you can just troubleshoot and look, oh, how are you doing? Oh, okay, that's how you do it. And then they have these systems where, what's it called? The facial animation,
The
whatever.
metahuman has the yeah.
Insanely detailed things like this, and it's like, holy shit, they have so much more potential with this engine. And then since it's Unreal, I assume they can just import a lot of the assets from the old Unreal. So
They could,
yeah,
in theory. One of the things that excites me about Unreal 5 the most from a development point of view, and why I also think 2025, I think probably my guess has been early 2025. I have a friend who actually used to work for EA and now works for Ubisoft, who I asked him, he's a high up developer in one of their studios. And I was like, here's what they're hiring right now. Here's what they've been putting out. Like, when would you think this game could come out? And he guessed like 2024. I think that seems way too early, but I'll take his word for it. But the thing that he pointed out to me is that Unreal 5 has a lot of very high efficiency tools. And one of the ones he pointed out to me that he's like jealous of because the engine they use doesn't have it is that metahuman that can make all the random faces and all that. It's what you were just talking about. I think they can feed voiceover lines into the model and it automatically and very
damn,
realistically does the animations for the face. And you can
wow.
even set it to be like angry and sad, and it will automatically do it very realistically. And so if you think about from a developer's point of view, not having to hand animate every single word, that it's done by the engine, and then you can go in and touch it up obviously. But if you think like, I can't even imagine the percentage of time animators spend on video games just animating like speech.
Yeah.
And if you have a tool that does 95% of the work for you, that's a big deal. Like, that's a
It's a
huge deal.
big deal for a game like Mass Effect that has so much dialogue.
Yep.
I mean, imagine having that system for the next Mass Effect, and everybody's faces are animated just like faces move when you talk, when you look around, and when you do other stuff. And you're like, holy shit, most of this is automated. Like this, I think Unreal 5 is definitely, especially because of MetaHuman, is just the best way to move forward because that's something I'm noticing right now in Andromeda. I know because I played Andromeda on release, I
Hmm.
do remember seeing like how the animations were just lackluster as hell. Like
Hmm.
people barely move their faces, blah blah blah. And then now
It's
when I
bad.
play it again, I can see that they have fixed a lot of the animations for the faces, but sometimes they've overly animated
Hmm.
certain expressions. And it's like, why do you suddenly do
Hmm.
this?
Yep.
This doesn't really fit the style of the game.
Yep.
So yeah,
Yep.
that's probably hand animated because they couldn't do it any other way. So
Yep.
Unreal Engine 5 MetaHumans, freaking awesome. I can't wait to see it.
It's a reason to be excited.
Yeah.
Well, I have a lot more to talk to you about, but I should probably let you go and not take you too much. And I think I'm going to have a little one pounding at my door. So, if you want to quickly kind of talk about where people can find everything you do, your YouTube and stuff like that, please let them know now.
Mr. Hulthen on YouTube, Mr. Hulthen on Twitch, Mr. Hulthen on Twitter. Same everywhere.
Nice and easy. Well, Alex, I really appreciate you coming on my podcast, and
Thank you.
I suspect we'll do it again sometime.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, there's my chat with MrHulthen. I hope you enjoyed it. It was a really good to talk to him and kind of pick his brain and get some of his perspectives and thoughts. For someone like me who's newer to the Mass Effect series, it's nice to kind of get the perspective of like more of like an OG fan, and obviously someone who's one of the more known and established Mass Effect content creators, because it's definitely a different perspective from my own. So that was great. I really hope you enjoyed it. I'm sure he and I will chat again sometime. If you liked the conversation, make sure to like the video here on YouTube, subscribe to my channel for more of this. I've got a bunch more Mass Effect videos. I've got a weekly gaming podcast called The EchoCast, and there's lots more content coming. Thanks for listening. Thanks for watching. You can catch me on socials at Bondiesel. You can catch MrHulthen everywhere as MrHulthen. And that's all I have for this one. So until next time.